Okay, hi everyone, Amelia here. Today we are talking about the auxiliary aids. So the auxiliary aids are your whip and your spur. And they're called auxiliary aids because they're not the aids that you should rely upon. They're aids that reinforce if your seat or your leg isn't working. So don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Also, I have a great email list, so sign up for that below if you want to get more information and notified when new videos come out. So first off, we're going to talk about the whip. And a lot of people struggle with the whip and figuring out how to use it because, first of all, how to hold it, how to switch it, and how to use it independent from your hands. Okay, so first off, when you're holding your whip, you want to just basically, you hold it like so, like 45-degree angle, and then you grab your reins. And you still want to have your pointer finger and your thumb pushing down on the reins, and then the whip points up basically in that hole between your thumb and your pointer finger. Now you want to hold your whip at a 45-degree angle on your thigh. So you don't want your whip to be pointing up like that, nor do you want your whip up here on the shoulder. You want to keep it at that 45-degree angle, and that allows you to maintain the correct hand position, because if you're doing this, it's making tension in your arm and your wrist is bending. So 45-degree angle. Now, if you struggle with your whip flopping all around, that's because you're not holding it against your leg. So when you're riding, you should have a little pressure of your whip on your thigh so that you know where your whip is and that you're not accidentally hitting your horse. Now, the other important thing to practice is to practice switching your whip. So to switch your whip, here I have the whip in my right hand. Now, the first thing that I do if I want to switch the whip is I put all the reins in my right hand, like so. So I'm holding the whip and all of my reins in my right hand. Then what I do is I pull the whip straight out like a sword. I put the whip down on the other side, and then I retake my reins in either hand. That's one method to how to switch your whip. Now the second method, now I have the whip in my left hand. So the second method for switching your whip is, again, you're going to put all the reins in one hand. So you always put all the reins in the hand that have the whip. Then you're going to reach over like so and take the whip over the head. So those are the two methods for switching your whip. It's important to practice that just at a standstill before you do it while you're going, because eventually you want to be able to do that while you're trotting or cantering. Now let's talk about how to use your whip in motion. So of course, like I said, your whip is an auxiliary aid. So you always want to first ask with your leg, and if the horse doesn't listen to the leg, then give them a little tickle with the whip. So the most common mistake that I see of people using their whip is that they pull their hand backwards with their whip when they use their whip. So say they want to tap the horse, they'll pull their hand back like this and give their horse a big smack. Now the problem with that is that when you pull your hand backwards, you're telling your horse to stop and go at the same time. So it's really important, if I'm going to tap my horse, that I keep my hand here and I tap. What's going to happen is you're going to tap your leg and the whip, oh sorry Don Carlos, the whip is going to ricochet back and hit your horse. So you shouldn't have to do this or bring your hand backwards. You just simply keep your hand in the same place, give your leg a little tap, and it's going to tap your horse like that. Good boy. And you can see this horse is really sensitive to the whip. Your horse, think about, a fly landing on your horse's back. Horses are really sensitive. And so there's no reason that you should have to smack your horse really hard with the whip. If you have to smack your horse really hard with the whip, it's probably because you've gotten your horse dull to the whip. Okay, so if you're trotting around and you want to use your whip to get your horse to go more forward, the first thing, of course, is to ask with your legs. So I'm gonna close my calf and ask for a bigger trot. And there he gave me a nice reaction, so I didn't need to use my whip. Now, if I do want to use my whip, I'm gonna give him a little tap. There, I gave him a tap. Good boy. And when you tap your horse, you want them to step their hind leg forward and through. So let me show you again. If I give him a little tap, there, tap, 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 tap. Good. Notice that my hand stayed forward. So a lot of people, let me show you that they have a bad reaction with their hand when they tap with a whip. They go like this. They pull, 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 and tap. So it's really important when you give your horse a little tickle with the whip that your hand stays forward at the same moment. So now I'm going to change direction. So a whip, you know, it can be a really useful aid because it kind of reminds your horse to use their hind leg. It kind of tickling them and actually touching their hind leg is a really good tool because it's kind of just like, hey, remember you have hind legs and you should use them. So now I'm going to try to switch my whip, and this horse doesn't like it when you switch your whip. You see how he gets a little tense? Good boy. So I have to be really quick and clever about it. And you saw how smoothly I put my reins in one hand, I took the whip over, and then I quickly got my reins back. So in general, you carry your whip on the inside hand in the trot and the outside hand in the canter. Because here in the trot, if I give him a little tap, 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 I'm influencing that inside hind leg. I'll show you again. Tap, tap, tap. Notice that I'm tapping when I'm coming out of the saddle, when that inside hind leg and the outside front leg are swinging forward, 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 forward. Good boy. Good boy, Don Carlos. So the whip can be used to help get a little expression in the trot, like I was showing you there. It can also be really helpful to use when your horse doesn't listen to your leg enough in the lateral work. So if I go up the center line here, and I'm gonna ride a leg yield, I can give a little tickle now, 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 and just remind him to move his hind leg over. Good boy. So those are the two places where the whip is really useful, is to activate the hind leg and also to help with lateral stuff. Good boy. So let me show you at the canter. And again, in general, you want your whip in the outside hand at the canter because you want to be able to influence the outside hind leg. You also want your whip in the outside hand at the canter because if you hit your horse on the inside, they're often going to try to do a flying change. So if I want to add a little jump in the canter, again, the timing of your whip is super important. So when his mane is flying up, 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 give him a little tap, tap, tap. And again, this horse is super sensitive to the whip. Tap, tap, tap. There. I have to be really careful because if I hit him too hard, he's going to be offended. There. Tap, tap, tap. Good. There, I created a little jump from the whip. But again, I'm always starting from my leg and then using the whip to kind of shape his hind end a little more under and active. Good boy. So that's how I use the whip. Let me show you again if I can carefully change the whip. Both my reins in one hand, take the whip over his head. He always gets a little tense when I change the whip. So if you're not good at changing the whip over, I would recommend going to the walk or the halt to change your whip over, because if you accidentally hit your horse or you drop your reins and you're trotting or cantering, that could be really bad. Good boy, Don Carlos. Okay, so the second auxiliary aid is your spur. And your spur, it's kind of important to consider. One is the placement of your spur on your heel. So you'll notice that this is a longer spur than I usually ride in, but you'll notice that it's kind of low down on my heel. Like sometimes I see people that they have their spurs way up high, which it won't stay up there, but they'll have their spur like way up pointing into the sky like that. And it a little bit depends on the length of your leg and the size of your horse. So if you have a really long leg like I do, and you have a really short horse that's kind of lazy, you may need to point your spur a little up and have a longer spur. If you have a really short leg and a big horse, so that your leg is more like on the horse's side like this, you're gonna wanna have a little bit of a shorter spur, so that you can use your leg without using the spur. That's really important, is that since the spur is an auxiliary aid, you need to be able to use your leg without putting your spur on. So you need to be able to use your upper leg, your calf, close your leg around the horse, and not use your spur. And that's also where it's really important that you have correct leg position, so that your toes are pointing forward and your knees are into the saddle. Because if you ride like this, you can see that my spur is always going to be on my horse, and you don't want that. You want to be able to use your leg first, then give a little kick with your spur if that doesn't work. Now it's also too important to consider the placement of your spur, but also the size and the softness of your spur. So these spurs are really pretty long, but they're really soft. They have a big round ball at the end of them. Some spurs are cut off sharp and they have like sharp metal edges. Other spurs have rowels, which are the round twirly things. Some rowels are smooth and some rowels are pokey. So if you have a big round soft ball on the end like this, that's pretty much the softest spur that you can get. If you have a sharp end to your spur, that's going to be harsher. If you have a smooth rowel, again, that, depending on how sharp it is, that may be harsher. And then the pointy rowels, like you think of like the Western spurs, those are the sharpest spur that you can get. Sorry, the flies are horrible today. So let me demonstrate to you how to use your spur. And as far as what spur to use, if you're new to spurs, I always start with a very tiny spur, and that's pretty soft. And then if you feel like that's not enough, you can add like a little more length or a little bit of a sharper end to your spur. It's also good to vary your spurs. Like with my FEI horses, if I have a FEI horse that's super lazy, I will use like some days a softer spur and some days a sharper spur, because you don't want them to get just immune to your spur. So I'm gonna ask him to trot. I'm gonna close my calf. And he trotted off nicely. And there I feel like I didn't use my spur at all. You will be able, there I gave him a little kick with my spur because he was dying out. So you will be able to feel through your boot when you use your spur. And try, for the most part, to just use your upper leg and your calf and not your spur. So it's really important to so there's different ways to use your spur. One way is to just give a quick little, close your calf. If that doesn't work, a quick little kick, like you saw there. So I closed my calf for a little activity. I felt like he didn't quite give it to me. Little kick, good boy. And I didn't really want the canter, but whenever you make a correction, if your horse gives you more than you want, you should always reward them. So again, I'm closing my calf and I give a little kick with my spur. Now, there are times that you'll press a little with your spur. So sometimes in the lateral work, like if I want to do a shoulder in, I may a little bit press 2-3 steps with my spur and then release my spur. If I want my horse to give more of a sideways reaction instead of a quick reaction. So the way that you use your spur, like if I press with my spur, it's going to give me a little bit of a softer, more profound reaction, versus if I kick with my spur, like there, you saw how that quickened him, like it gave a little bit more of an electric reaction. So let me show you here. I'm going to press. It's mostly actually my inside leg, but if I press with my spur, it's going to help to move him a little more sideways. And then if I give a quick kick, it's going to give a quicker reaction. So those are kind of the two ways to use your spurs, is either you can press with your spur and a little bit hold it there until your horse gets off it, but just make sure that you should never like press and hold for a prolonged period of time. So either pressing or giving a quick little kick. But always remember that your spurs are auxiliary, so you want to try to just use your leg first, and if you need to, give a quick correction with your leg. So let me know if this video helped, and good luck with your auxiliary aids. Thanks for watching.